I hated my position in life. At the age I'm at now, I expected a lot more for myself. And they had 23,000 properties under ownership. I was like, holy crap, like, who are these guys? If you seek the knowledge and take action and you're persistent and you put a lot of energy behind it, like you'll get there.
Welcome back to another episode of the Austin Zaback Show. Today we have a good friend of mine and a legend in the real estate industry, Victor Heredia. And Victor, I remember we were talking before the show. We met, I believe, back in 2018. Somewhere in that ballpark. We met at Nick Lovano and Octavius's, I guess, like real estate.
They're intensive.
Yeah, they're intensive, right?
Yeah.
2-day intensive. And man, I remember meeting you there and you were talking about, I believe at that time you were getting out of another industry.
Correct.
Getting into the real estate industry. And you did very well in that industry.
Yeah.
And to see what you've done, and for everybody watching, make sure you stay to the end of the episode and to the end of the podcast, because to see what you did from then till now is on another level, and I'm excited to talk about it.
And
man.
likewise.
I appreciate that. Yeah.
Sure.
So, dude, talk to me about like you get into the real estate industry, and there's not that many people that get into real estate and just dominate it, right? Like, and you did, like you totally blew it out of the park. Talk to me a little bit about like how you got in, why you got into real estate, and what you kind of did in the beginning.
For me, it was really, I just wanted a better life. I come from a produce background, and the owners of the company were my family. They're my cousins, and they all did really well. They're wealthy, and I saw the kind of life that they had, so I wanted to have that for myself. The truth is, you can't have that unless you're an owner, right? So I'm like, well, I need to do something where it could be my own thing.
Yeah.
And I came across some guys that were making really good money with real estate and no money down. And it's interesting, I had heard about Carlton Sheets.
Oh, wow. Okay.
When I was a kid. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, yeah, you can't buy real estate, no money down. That's a scam. Mm-hmm. I just didn't believe it. And as I got older, I'm like, man, that was real. And so I started following, first it was Jalen White, and then after that it was Alex Saenz, and then Carlos Reyes, and then I learned about Sean Terry. And I think with me, one, I was aggressive, number one, but I was humble. So I was open to learning from people, and I studied as many people as I could. I just figured, hey, if there's some level of success there, I want to know what they're doing. And so I was really humble and trying to find out what that was. And I learned that from my cousin. My cousin, I don't know if you know, he had about 2,000 to 3,000 employees. Mm. And one time we were having steaks at Chula's Steakhouse, and I asked him, like, man, how did you do it? How did you get to this level? And I said, what are like the 3 things that made a difference in your success? And I was waiting for this like great, like just strategy, right? Like, okay, this is the secret sauce. And he's like, you know what? Number one, I was humble. And I've told this story before, and I tell it on every podcast because I think it's important, right? I'm like, what? And he's like, yeah, I was humble. He's like, I just realized I didn't know everything. So everyone that was in my industry, I made friends with them, I seeked them out, I got their advice, and I applied what I learned from them to my business. And what happened is he became the dominating force in the industry, right? So I think it made a big, big difference in having that insight of being humble.
Wow.
So I took that over to the real estate industry. Even now, I learn from everyone as much as I can, I always ask questions. Some people might think like, well, this guy's dumb, why do you ask so many questions? But it's for a reason. I want to see your input. I might know the answer, but I want to know your thoughts.
Sure. You definitely, like, ever since the day I met you, I've always gotten the vibe that you're just a really humble guy. Oh. And you're eager to learn. You're somebody who from the very beginning, you're constantly putting yourself in positions and situations to learn. Yeah. Right. And so everything you said is so true. And it's interesting to hear that you got that from your cousin, you said?
Yeah, my cousin,
Yeah, like he said one thing, and then it seems like you did a really good job of actually going totally. and living that out,
I listened to it.
Yeah, you really did.
That was his number one thing, and it took me by surprise. I did not expect that.
Yeah. How do you think humility, like, what do you think the difference is between people who are humble in real estate or business or whatever, and people who maybe aren't humble?
Well, it's funny. I've heard some people, friends of mine, say you shouldn't be humble, because that's a low opinion of yourself. That's not true. I mean, in the Bible, it says you should be humble, right? It doesn't mean you have a low opinion of yourself. It just means you don't think you're better than others. And so when you go into a situation or a conversation where you don't think you're better than this other person, what happens? All of a sudden, you're open to learning. Like as soon as you think like that, I'm no better than this guy, you're open to seeing what they have and what they say, because you can learn from everybody. It doesn't matter where they're at. So having that humility and not thinking you're superior to others, it allows you to learn. And I think that's really the difference. And like there's so much stuff out there that we don't know. Like you don't know what you don't know, right? I mean, if like none of us are like billionaires, is because there's information that we're missing. I mean, that's the reality. Like we're missing how to build a team to that level. We're missing a strategy. There's something that's missing. That's why we're not at that level yet. So you have to always learn. Having curiosity is huge as well. Yeah.
How do you be humble and not, because I think what you were referring to a minute ago is like, maybe let's call it self-love, right? So how do you be humble, but also love yourself and, have a lot of confidence?
Yeah.
How do you walk that line?
Well, like I said, I think being humble isn't having a low opinion of yourself. It's just not thinking more of others. But at the same time, if you want to achieve a lot in life, it takes self-confidence. It takes self-worth. If I want a better life for myself and my family, it's because I deserve it. So you have to be deserving.
Sure.
Also, too, and not to get all preachy, but, in the Bible, it says, like, we're a little bit below angels. We're not a lot below angels. We're a little bit below angels. So we're divine creatures. Like, we have power within us. We just don't live to our potential.
Sure. There's an old saying that says that humility is not thinking less of yourself, but it's thinking of yourself less frequent, right?
Correct.
So it's not thinking less, it's thinking less.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, a lot of times people say, and not to downplay people that have depression, but a lot of times they say when you're depressed, you're thinking about yourself. You're not really thinking about others and how you could serve and help others. And I know there's more to it. There's obviously, mental issues, but a lot of times if you're just sad about something, you're internalizing too much. Sometimes you want to externalize and just think about others and how you can help others. And I think that makes a big difference.
So when you went to this event, the 2-day, right?
Yeah.
Was that after you had kind of, obviously at that point you figured out about like Nick and Octavia.
Yeah.
So you had already learned about like Jalen. It's funny because I used to like be good, or like, I knew Jalen White pretty well.
Yeah.
And I still do. Like every once in a while I'll message him and I'll, and I don't even think he does real estate anymore.
No,
I think he's in like software.
Affiliate marketing or something like that. Yeah.
Some internet. Yeah. But I remember like him and his wife, Brianna. And then I remember like back in the day, like Alex and Carlos, like, and there's a lot of these guys that were kind of the first people on social media, I guess, or whatever. So did you see an ad? Like, how did you become familiar with wholesaling in particular?
So I knew about, so it's funny, I used to work for wholesalers, but years ago, in 2008, but they called it flipping. So it wasn't wholesaling. So I was just their acquisition guy. I was just getting the deals. I had no idea what went on the back end. And then I saw, I think in 2018, I think I saw Ty Lopez was interviewing a guy, and he was making $100,000 a month, and he was this young kid, and it was Jalen White. I'm like, what?
I didn't know Ty interviewed Jalen.
Yeah, so
wow.
Ty came out with a course on wholesaling with Jalen White. So I ordered that, but then I'm like, well, like, who did he learn it from? I knew he learned it from someone, because at 18 years old, you just don't go out and do it.
Sure.
Right? You just don't. And not to take away from Jalen, he's a really smart guy. Like, that. He's super smart. But I know, like, well, he learned it from someone. So I did my research, and sure enough, he learned it from Sean Terry, which everyone else kind of did. Like, he's the OG.
The OG, yeah.
And so then I ordered his course, and I just studied it for 3 months straight. And then after I did that, my wife would tell me, like, okay, why don't you just start doing it? I'm like, you know what? I want to know the business in and out. Because then when you know the business, it gives you power to move forward, right? Because if you don't understand everything, you're going to hesitate.
Sure.
I didn't want to hesitate. So I studied for 3 months straight, and then I did my first deal in 10 days.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Did you get fully out of the produce industry and then like have kind of a time where you were just studying, or were you still doing the...
Yeah, I was doing it for like a year and a half, part-time, year and a half, maybe almost... I think when I went to that event, I was still doing produce. I was still working a full-time job. So I would work from like 6 to 3, and then, for 3:30. And then from then I would do real estate, Wow. But the one thing too about the produce industry, I was like coordinating trucks from Mexico into the U.S. So our customers were Whole Foods and Walmart. So they were really big accounts. So it took a lot of management to handle the trucking side of it, the logistics side, which is what drove me crazy. So I was pretty busy, but I was determined to make it happen.
And you were making good money in produce. I mean, right? I mean, like compared to, but you just didn't have the time freedom. Like what got you thinking like, man, like I want to go do real estate. Like, why did you want to leave that industry to go do potentially real estate?
Well, I mean, I was making probably like 80 a year, which is good money, right? But I just wanted more, even if you're making 80 a year, you're still kind of living paycheck to paycheck, right? And I didn't want that. And then, like we all die, right? We all die. Like, do you want to just work a 9 to 5 for 30, 40 years and then retire and that's it? Like, no, I wanted a better life. I just wanted more from life. And then, like I said, I saw my cousins that they were living a good life, traveling the world and whatnot. And I'm like, well, hey, I want that for myself. And then you see a lot of other guys that are living great lives. I'm like, well, they're no better than me. That's the way I saw it. And I know I'm like, well, hey, if I feel I'm intelligent enough to do it on my own, I'm going to do it on my own.
Yeah.
And that was kind of my mindset.
Do you think that doing it part-time, like doing kind of the way that you did it, was the right thing to do at the time? Like, you see a lot of people now today where, and I don't know, I guess it depends on the scenario, but you see people who just like quit their job.
Yeah.
Right. And then they go try to do real estate or whatever, or multi-level marketing or insurance or whatever they're doing. A lot of times it's real estate, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes I think that's a mistake. And other times I think maybe it can be good. I guess it depends on the scenario. But looking back, do you believe that, going and doing that, because if you were still doing produce for a year and a half, like, do you think you could have done real estate quicker and been successful quicker? Do you think you did it perfectly?
I probably could have. I probably could have left sooner, but I wanted to have money in the bank as well. And I mean, I got in at the right time. Like the interest rates were low, like we were talking.
Yeah.
So assets were climbing. Everyone was buying. It was the right time. Like, are you going to quit your job now in this market to wholesale? No, I don't recommend it. I ran out. It's definitely something you want to do part time. It's just too risky. If you got money in the bank, I mean, then why not? But if you're living paycheck to paycheck, you definitely want to do it part time, which is what I did.
Think it through.
Yeah, definitely, without a doubt.
But back then, like you didn't know, so like, I'll try to articulate it the right way. But now you have a really good understanding of the real estate world, right?
Yeah.
But back then, when you're in the produce industry full time, it's not like, I can't imagine you had a really fundamental good understanding of the real estate world.
Yeah.
And if you think about the media, like even in 2018, like I remember people talking about like the market's going to crash, the market's going to crash. Obviously, in retrospect, that's not what happened, right?
Yeah.
But you couldn't have known that really back then. I mean, people said that for like 4 years.
Yeah.
People
correct.
made YouTube videos
Exactly.
like the market any day now, right?
I was waiting for it to happen myself. Yeah. Exactly.
So I feel like at any time, there's a lot of people that like, when you still took that leap of faith.
Yeah.
In the midst of that, at some point, right? You got into the real estate industry and you did eventually quit your job, right?
Yeah, and but that's the thing with me. I didn't hate my job. It was a good job. I enjoyed it. I love working with my family. I love my cousin. It was, the people I work with, the girls in the office were great. I loved everybody. I hated my position in life. I was really frustrated where I was. I'm like, at the age I'm at now, I expected a lot more from myself. I just hated my position. Not so much my position in the company, but just my position in life in general. And I wanted more. I wanted more for myself. I wanted more for my family. And it's not until you get to the point where you want more for life, from life, for yourself, is when you're going to take that step to really, get to that next level.
Yeah.
You have to have like fire in your belly, right? You have to have some electricity in your veins, like they say. You have to want it. Like, it's not enough to just like hope for it or like, hey, it'd be nice. Like, you have to want it and be determined to have it. And so that's kind of my thought process. I was like, I'm going to do it no matter what. And then also too, the great thing about going to events and masterminds is that you start to see guys that are maybe even younger than you and they're killing it. And I'm like, okay, well, if they could do it, I can do it. So that helps too. So I think it's really important to surround yourself with people in the industry because you meet all kinds of people from different backgrounds and just different walks of life, and they're doing really well. And I'm like, hey, I'm not better than this guy, but he's not better than me. So if he can do it, I can do it. And also too, to see the success that my family had, I'm like, well, hey, I think I have enough business knowledge to make it happen for myself.
Hey, real quick, I just want you to do me a huge favor. If you're enjoying the show and you're enjoying all the amazing guests that we've been having on lately, then do me a massive favor and smash the like button, drop a comment down below, and subscribe if you have not already. I would greatly appreciate it. It would mean the world to me, and we will be able to bring on a lot more big names if you help us out. Now let's get back to the show. Sure, yeah. Not everybody sees it that way, though, you know?
Yeah.
Like, and I think you have a very optimistic personality, which most of the people I interview do naturally, right? But, you know, there's a lot of people in the world that they go and they see people doing better than them, and they kind of take it the wrong way almost. Like, you know, like, or they'll say things like, oh, yeah, but, you know, fill in the blank, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, that person's better looking than me, or they're more confident than I am, or they have a better education than I do, and they talk themselves out of it, right?
Yeah,
like, and
exactly.
And so, what do you think the difference was between, like, how, you know, you and them? Was it that just you were just at a place where you were sick and tired of being sick and tired, and you were like, man, like, I got to make the change, and I don't have, I can't afford to be negative, right? Like, it's just like I have to obviously look at these people and believe that I can do it too.
Well, I think, you know, I was very, I'm not a conformist, you know, I was very nonconformist. So, like, that's one. Like, if you're happy where you're at, you're going to stay where you're at, right? But also, too, I think a big part, too, is, like, reading books. I think reading books, it just really shifts your mindset. Like, when you, like, The Alchemist, I think it's a great book. It's a great story. I think it's Will Smith's favorite book. So it's a great book. And it just really, it kind of shifts your way of thinking. Also, like, when you read Og Mandino's book, you know, The Greatest Salesman That Ever Lived, like, and then you find out the guy lived on the streets for 3 years, and he pretty much slept in a library, you know, to stay warm, and he started reading books, and then he became an author and became successful, but he was a homeless guy. Yeah. So when you hear those stories, you think, like, well, hey, shoot, if this guy was homeless, if this guy didn't have money, there's so many of those stories that you hear about, and it kind of motivates you, like, well, hey, if they did it, I can do it.
I love that.
And ultimately, it just comes down to your will to succeed. Like, I'm going to make it happen no matter what. Now, will it be real estate? Great, then terrific. If it's something else, then so be it. But I'm going to make it happen no matter what. I knew it wasn't about my intelligence or my skill. It was about that I was missing a strategy. Sure. And as soon as I found the strategy, I just ran with it.
Yeah. So you've now made, you know, millions and millions of dollars in real estate, right? And you did so in a very short period of time. So I want to talk about that for a little while. You know, what did you do when you finally went and you did that deal? You talked about it a little while ago, right? You did your studying, you went to the masterminds, you did your thing, right? And then you told your wife, and you said, okay, I'm going to do it. And then I think you said 10 days later you did a deal?
Yeah, correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
See, boom, you do a deal. Where did that deal come from?
So it was a foreclosure list. So I called foreclosure, and it's interesting. After I heard about Jalen and then Alex Saenz, and then I ran across Carlos Reyes, and I sent him a message. And Carlos is just a great heart. You know, he's really open and giving with everyone. We just kind of clicked. We hit it off, and he's like, "Hey, come by to my office." And I know he was doing really well. This is right around the time he was starting to do coaching, and he wasn't even doing speaking yet. And so I reached out to him. He's like, come down. I went to his office. I met them. I met Carlos and Sal. And he's like, yeah, if you get a deal, send it over. And so I got this deal. I'm like, hey, Carlos, what do you think? He's like, yeah, dude, that's a deal. Lock it up. So I went to the appointment. I talked to the sellers. I locked it up. I told them how we work. And that very night, I went to their office, and I gave Sal the contract, and they sold it, and within a matter of days, and we made $22,000 on that deal. Yeah. So that was my first deal was with Carlos and Sal.
That had to have been a very eye-opening deal.
Yes,
right?
It was.
Because in a very short period of time, you went, I mean, even if you made 50% of that, I don't know how you...
Yeah, it was 50-50, yeah.
So you made $11,000.
Yeah.
Right? In a matter of a very short period of time,
Correct.
Which was an eighth of what you were making doing per year.
Exactly.
Doing the produce.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. But also, too, like, when I went to their office, I'm like, man, these guys are younger than me, and they got a full office, fully staffed. They're making a ton of money. Like this works, right? This works. And so that kind of, it's like, I'm going to go for it.
Yeah, I love that. That's awesome. So did you cold call the pre-foreclosure?
Yes, it was cold call. Yeah.
Okay.
Cold call. Yeah.
And where did you get the data back then? Do you remember?
Back then, I think it was ListSource.
Okay.
I think it was ListSource. Yeah.
That's where I used to get my data
Yeah,
too.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, very
It's
cool.
a good platform. Yeah.
Yeah, they're still good today.
It's just a little hard to use.
They're probably not the user interface is not
Correct.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
correct.
totally agree.
Yeah.
So now you did this deal, and then walk me through what happens next. Like you go back to your wife, you're like, I'd imagine there's some sort of like internal like, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
like I just did my first deal.
I
like,
think what we did, we went to, we stayed at the Phoenician for the weekend to celebrate, and we went for dinner, and so that was cool. So after every deal, we would do like a nice dinner, something fun, to celebrate. So that kind of, what that does, that kind of motivates you to do more, right? Because it's like, okay, like let's celebrate the next one and the next one. And then I realized, okay, well, at some point, the guys that were killing it, they had teams. So then I'm
it
like,
was just you at that point.
it was just me at that point. So I got to hire a team. So then it's got to the point after every deal, I would hire a cold caller and another cold caller, another cold, and that's kind of what I did. And it's interesting that we met at that event because I knew the strategies, I knew everything about the business at that point because I had studied so much. But we went to Nick and Octavius's event. When they did the math on the numbers, I was like, oh shoot, like the reason I can't get to 8, 10, 12 deals a month, it's just a numbers game. I got to call a lot more people, make a lot more offers. So I realized how important like scaling your teams, the dials, like all that was a big factor. And so once that really, because I was making money, but I'm like, man, I'm doing 1 deal a month here, I'm doing 2 here. It wasn't to that level. And then once I scaled, cold calling is when it really started to kick in.
I love that.
Yeah.
How many deals would you say, like, did it get to a point where when it was just you got to it, like you were just totally bottlenecked, like you would acquire a deal? Because if you're cold calling and you're the acquisition guy and you're the disposition guy and you're the transaction coordinator, right? I mean, you're doing the whole thing, right?
Yeah.
If you've ever wanted to get into wholesaling real estate and you want to learn how to flip contracts and wholesale, right? Maybe you're brand new, maybe you've never wholesaled a deal, or maybe you're even doing a couple of deals a month right now, but you want to learn how to do more. Instead of joining my coaching program or somebody else's coaching program, we're actually looking to hire. So go ahead and message me 480-418-5339 and send me a text message opportunity, okay? So if you wanna work with me, you wanna work with my incredible team, you want all of our leads, you want all of our systems, all of our processes, everything, right? And I've done about 2,000 wholesale deals in my career, then go ahead, shoot me a text, 480-418-5339 and message me opportunity. And look, especially if you're in my state, okay, the state of Arizona. If you live in Arizona and you want to get into wholesaling, this especially is an opportunity for you because you can come sit right in this office with my entire team and be a part of one of the biggest wholesaling companies in the country. I look forward to talking to you. Like, did you feel that overwhelming kind of sense of like, I'm just not going to be able to ever really gain traction here?
Yeah, I think when I was doing everything, I mean, I had callers, but I was doing everything. I was doing, like 3 to 5 deals a month by myself, which actually is pretty good for a solo person. Mm-hmm. But I had a lot of sales experience. I've been doing sales since I was 18, so that helped. Also at that time, I was doing all my dispo through Keegley, and I was working a lot with Thomas Martinez. Yep. So we're just doing a lot with Keegley, and so that helped. I kind of took the dispo side off my plate.
Yeah.
So that made a difference, and I think for a lot of guys that are just starting, that's probably what you want to do. Like you want to like try to focus on acquisitions, and then maybe work with someone else to do the dispo for you until you get to a certain point. I mean, even us on a lot of deals, we still do it because
100%,
it's a good outlet, right? It's a good outlet. Like there's always going to be a buyer out there that you don't have. So if you always think, well, I want to do my own dispo, that's cool. I do my own dispo, but if I have to use someone else, another dispo company or another wholesaler that has a relationship, I'll do it. I don't mind.
Goes back to humility.
Correct.
Right? Because I think in the industry that we're in, a lot of people, unfortunately, they get a big ego.
Yeah.
And they're like, I want to do it all myself or whatever. And they didn't even know why. It's like, well, why are you saying that? Like, what, like, if you could make more money just acquiring deals, in the beginning, then why would you want to do it all yourself?
Yeah, exactly. I tell some guys, like, dispo your own deal, get offers. But if you get a better offer from a dispo company, then why would you not take it?
Yeah.
Right?
Well, I think you immediately, because what you're describing and I think a lot of people, to your point, they make the mistake, right? Your business looks like this, because what happens is you get a deal, and you're like up here, right? And then now you immediately have to go sell the deal.
Yeah.
And then, but now you do all this work and you finally get the deal sold, and you're back at square one again.
Yeah.
Right? And then you got to go get another deal.
Exactly.
And you got to sell the deal, right? And I think you really have to start building a big team because it's almost two different companies, like acquisitions and dispositions in a way.
Almost,
Almost, right? Obviously, it's one company, and I run both out of my office and in one office. I'm sure you do too. Yeah. But it's two totally different animals, right? Like you're not, like all the systems and processes and all the things you have to do on the AC is totally different than what you got to do on the other end.
Yeah.
Right? So I totally agree with you, and I think people should definitely do that. So cold calling, did that become your main form of marketing then for a long time?
Yeah, cold calling. And then we did some SMS as well, but cold calling was always number one for us.
Where did you hire your cold callers initially?
Out of Mexico. So it's interesting. I went down to Rocky Point, and I met I knew him, my wife's cousin, and he was speaking perfect English. I'm like, he speaks English? She's like, yeah. I'm like, she's like, he works at a call center. I'm like, man, he had never been in the U.S., but he spoke English. And I'm like, you want a job? He's like, yeah. And so I hired him as a cold caller. He introduced me to some friends, and then those friends introduced me to other friends, and eventually, we had 13, 15 cold callers working for us out of Mexico.
Wow.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
And if you don't mind me asking, like roughly, how much did you have to pay them back then?
So I think I would start everyone like around $350, because that was kind of the going rate. And then if they're really good, they got me a lot of deals, I'd bump them up. It got to one point I was paying them $5 an hour for like the guys that were with me for a long time, because you want to give raises, what I mean. And then also too, I would pay them $300 for every deal, which a lot of people like
Don't do
that's
that.
too much money.
Yeah.
I'm like, no, if they're getting me deals and I'm closing the deal, what's $300? Like, they love it. I mean, why not? So I don't mind sharing the wealth. So I do that now with my callers. If they give me a deal, they get $300 bonus.
I love that. Are you still out of Rocky Point?
So I have a small team there now, but now we shifted to Egyptian callers. They just have my cost per lead is a lot less. It's a lot less than Mexican, because I think that the data that we were using wasn't as great, and then also too, just the work ethic isn't as good. It's not the same. I mean, they're good workers, but it's just not the same.
Yeah. Maxwell's in the Egyptian, right? The callers.
I think he does. Yeah, I think a lot of guys do actually now. Well, Call Geeks, I think most of their callers are in Egypt.
Are they really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, they got a Mexico office too, so Mexico and Egypt.
Because Max was just in Egypt, I think. He made like a video. I remember seeing a video where he's like, Max was one of the first dudes that I met when, I was in wholesaling, and then he just got into wholesaling, and I went and did a video with him in LA.
Oh wow!
Back when I didn't even think he had ever closed a deal yet. He was like living with his mom.
Oh, you kidding?
In LA. Still, the video's still on YouTube.
Wow, that's nuts.
And anyway, so I saw a video of Max where he's in Egypt, and it looked like he's building a call center out there.
I didn't know that. I wouldn't be surprised.
Maybe it's a white label or something, which would probably be, I guess, a smart thing to do. But I'm sure he's invested in it or something to that effect. Yeah.
That's cool.
Have you ever done the Philippines at all? Or
yes, really good workers, but I think the accent and the culture just aren't a good fit for cold calling. I have some friends that have done well with Filipinos. I didn't really get good results from them. As a matter of fact, when I switched from Filipinos to Mexicans, it made a huge difference.
To Egyptians?
It was to Mexicans.
Oh, wow.
That was night and day difference.
So you went Philippines,
Mexican,
Mexicans, Egyptians.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
And I wonder why that is. And we have a big Filipino team.
Yeah.
And I will say that the hiring process there, you've got to be more thorough, because some are good.
Yeah.
And some aren't good.
Yeah.
And you've got to be careful you get the good one.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah, I don't know. The ones we've had, it just they're very like straight and narrow, which is good, right? But also too, like Egyptians have more sass. I don't know. It's something about that culture. They're just, a disc test is huge, right? I'm sure you do the disc test.
Yeah.
So the disc test, every Egyptian, I mean, they're they're high D's, high I's. It's crazy. A lot of them. We actually hired callers out of St. Lucia. We had a full team of 15 out of St. Lucia. Beautiful, amazing people. I love their accents. Super nice people. But they didn't give us good results.
Yeah.
And their disc tests were low D, low I. And I think it's a cultural thing. I think in Egypt, maybe the culture there, they're just more high D, high I.
Yeah, for whatever reason.
It's kind of weird, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I makes sense, right? I mean, like, you different cultures and I mean, I know one thing for sure. I'll never hire an American cold caller.
Yeah,
you know,
agreed.
I mean,
100%.
straight up, right?
Yeah.
Like Americans are very lazy.
Yeah.
You know, and you got to pay them way too much money.
Yeah, exactly.
We tried at one point. I don't know if you remember. Nick and Octavius at one point were using like stay-at-home
people
moms.
and then people out of Georgia,
Yeah.
Alabama,
Minimum wage.
Yeah, correct.
7.25.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. We did that for a little while.
Yeah, and how'd it go?
It was
So-so?
okay. It was okay.
Yeah.
But you were looking for like the stay-at-home mom.
Yeah.
Who would do like Kentucky. I think we have one in Kentucky and Georgia, Kansas City or something like that. I can't even remember, but it was all right. They were. The problem was though that you had these people all over, right? And you had training them was difficult. Because they're not in one location, and so like you got to get them all rallied up on like a Zoom call, and then they're kind of all at different levels, and there's really no accountability there, and you've got to like monitor their screen. Like we had apps that would like monitor.
It's a lot
their
more
screen.
management. Yeah, it's a lot more management. And even with Mexicans too, the problem with them is I had to manage them directly. Whereas the call center in Egypt, we have a call center there. I just got one guy that manages everything. It just makes it so much easier.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah.
Now that you go ahead.
Well, let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
Do you give a disc test to your callers?
We do. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's what we do too.
Yeah, and when we hire people now too, even internally, we do a color test right now, which is kind of like a disc test, but same concept, and we do. Yeah, we're always looking for those types of people, regardless of. I think we've learned really that any position in wholesaling, any sales position where you're talking to people all day long, you pretty much have to be high D. Or like the color test that we do is like the red, which is the same thing as like a D.
Is a high D,
yeah.
So that's for everybody in your business?
Not transaction coordinators, not people like that, but anybody that is in like an acquisitions role. I wouldn't say that we make it mandatory, but there's a very high likelihood that if we don't do that, they won't work out.
Well,
And
for me,
we've
I've already
noticed
noticed
the
if you
trend.
have a low D and a low I, you're not going to sell.
Yeah.
I just realized that.
Once in a blue moon, we'll have somebody prove that wrong.
Yeah, if you're lucky,
If we're lucky, right? And but we're always like really cautious. Like we'll interview somebody and like they won't be the color that we thought they were going to be.
Yeah, well, there could be someone that you talk to them and they have this outgoing personality, but for some reason it's a low D, low I. I'm like, well, that's weird.
You're like, yeah, like almost like did you take the test right?
Yeah.
Or like and so once in a blue moon we'll make an exception. But that's what we typically do.
Yeah, that makes sense.
In your what do we call it now? Like 5 years, I guess, of wholesaling. What would you say the number one marketing method would be that you get or have gotten the most amount of deals?
Well, for us, it was cold calling. It was because we started doing it when everyone started doing it, so it was working, and then we got into texting, and that did good. And
back in the day, though, right?
Yeah, back in the day, yeah.
Because now it's a little bit tough.
Oh yeah. You get your messages get blocked, et cetera. Yeah, so it's different. And then as soon as the hedge funds started buying, we did really good with cold calling because then you could call that buy box. That was a game changer, as you know, right? But now I think it's more PPC. We're leaning more towards PPC more than anything else. Like it's hard to. You can't increase your budget quickly because it throws off the algorithm of your budget for whatever reason. But if I could spend, 100% of our money on PPC, that's what we would do.
Wow. Yeah. Interesting. I wonder, like, have you ever run a bad PPC campaign with anybody at all by any chance? Like, I've run bad campaigns in the past, and I've run some good ones too. But I've definitely ran some where, like, it just puts a horrible taste in my mouth too at the same time where I'm like, man.
Do you do in-house or you hire someone else?
No, I've outsourced it every time.
Gotcha. So that's the thing. So Sean Terry and Nick Perry, they both recommend in-house.
Okay.
And so I never tried anyone external. I never outsourced it because I know, one, they charge you $2,000 a month or $1,500 a month for the management. There's some companies that do well. I know Ethan that works with Sean Terry. He does a good job. But other than that, I like to manage our own. So actually what I did, I got Sean's course, PPC Secrets, I think it is.
Yeah.
And I think AdWord Nerds as well. And I told my wife, learn these. And she's smart. She used to do marketing. So she runs our PPC campaigns, and she's always tweaking it. And then I always give her ideas. And so that made a big difference, doing it in-house.
Yeah.
And you just have to have someone like study everything and then just have them do it. And then say, hey, listen, for every deal, I'm going to pay you X amount.
Oh, wow.
So that's kind of what I would do. So every time we get a deal, she gets a purse.
I love that. Yeah. Yeah. Depending on how big the deal is.
Exactly.
Depends on the brand of the purse.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I love that.
Yeah.
Have you ever thought about doing like TV commercials or radio or anything like? I had Doug Hopkins on the show recently, and we were talking about like TV. Obviously, you know Doug. You know.
Yeah.
And we were talking about TV and radio and everything like that, and they crush it. I didn't realize.
He does. I think, is it like 15, 20
Dude,
million
like
a year? It's crazy. I've heard.
ridiculous amount.
I've heard. Yeah, he does a lot.
And he does. Doug now, he advertises TV commercials in 60 cities around the nation.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And so Doug now, believe it or not, and then I'll let you answer the question, but he started a media company, and now you can so he only does deals in 2 cities. Here, I think in either
I think somewhere in California, right?
yeah. And then all the other cities he's advertising in, somebody else is paying to use his name and face on TV, and then they get the lead.
Really?
Uh-huh.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's interesting. That's
And
really smart.
he'll manage it all and do everything, you know.
Wow.
And you can either choose, I guess now they give you the option where you can choose to use his face and name or your own.
Really?
But either way, his media company will manage the or the because apparently now they know like what TV shows to advertise on and what times of the day or night, and he knows like, okay, if I advertise after, I don't know, SpongeBob SquarePants, like it'll do this good and that good, and like he has a really good understanding of that now.
Wow.
So apparently it's really
So it's
valuable.
almost like he's franchising himself.
Yeah.
That's crazy. That's very cool.
Yeah.
He's very cool.
So I don't know if you've ever thought about doing that, but I've been thinking a lot about that.
I've thought about doing radio and TV. I haven't done it yet, but I've thought about it. Yeah.
Well, it's real similar to pay-per-click, right? It's in the sense that it's the idea that people are calling you.
Yeah.
Because and there's no better lead in my opinion, right, than the people that are calling you.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, those are the best leads by far.
Yeah.
By far. I mean, cold call leads, like I said, when the hedge funds were buying strong, they're really good.
Well, yeah, because you could give them what they wanted pretty much. I mean, like,
but now it's a different ballgame.
Different ballgame. Yeah.
Exactly.
So going back a little bit, just to kind of bring it full circle on the wholesaling, who were the people that obviously you said you realized at one point you had to build a team, right?
Yeah.
Who is how did you build the team, I guess, in what order? Like, who are the people that you hired for somebody watching that might be new, right? And they want to build a team. Maybe they're doing everything on their own right now. What would you recommend to them, and how did you do it? And like, was it acquisitions and then a transaction coordinator, and then how did it go?
So I think it depends on your skill set. Is one, because I met a guy at an event. He's like, I've been wholesaling for, I think, almost a year and a half. He goes, I haven't got a deal yet. But I was talking to him, and he just didn't have that sales personality. So I think knowing your strengths and weaknesses is huge, right? Like if you know, like, hey, I'm not a good salesperson. If you know that, then you want to probably hire an acquisition guy. But what I did, I know I was good at sales. I could talk to people. I could close deals. So I focused on building out my cold callers. And then I got a VA to assist me. And then I got a person sending text messages. So I built out like assistants and cold callers. And then once I got to the point like, hey, I'm stuck at 5 deals a month, I hired an acquisition guy. And actually it was my best friend that I worked with since we were kids. We knew each other. He worked with me in the produce business. So I hired him, and he's great with people. He's actually better at building rapport with people than I am. But I got my strengths as well. So I hired him as acquisitions, and he started doing well. At first, it was a little bit of a challenge, but after a while, he started crushing it. And then I hired a couple other acquisition guys and lead managers, et cetera. And so, I think depends on your strengths, but I think you build out a team, a VA, and then an acquisition.
Yeah.
But if you're not a good salesperson, you got to get one.
You got to get AC. Yeah,
Correct.
Because I think you could probably be a good salesperson, or not a good salesperson, but be an entrepreneur.
Correct.
Like there are people like that out there, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Who they have kind of the vision. Maybe they could hire people. They have a higher level of risk tolerance, maybe,
Yeah.
but they're not great at sales.
Correct.
100%.
100%.
Which I can't relate to because I'm pretty dang good at sales.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I guess there's people out there like that. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you have that personality.
Yeah,
though.
yeah.
So, I mean,
Just
you're,
like you.
you're a talker. Like, we like to talk. We're kind of extroverts. But yeah, some people just aren't like that. So
Yeah.
but they can be super smart and have other skills. So they just want to hire that out.
Sure.
You
Yeah.
know?
Okay. I love that. And then talk to me about like now we're in a market where you obviously dominated the hedge fund era, like totally dominated it,
Yeah.
right? I mean, you were making 7 figures. We'll just call it that,
Yeah.
right? Which I mean was awesome. Do you think that they'll ever get back into the game?
Yeah, I do. I think they're going to come back stronger. So I think I did really good with funds because I built relationships. I'll tell that story. So I got it because I think people want to know, like, how did you do that? So I got a deal in Austin, and then I did a search for buyers in that area. You look for buyers in the area, and I found a buyer, and I clicked on their link properties in PropStream, and they had 23,000 properties under management or under ownership. I was like, holy crap! I'm like, who are these guys? So then I called them for 3 months straight, like nonstop. And it's actually when in the produce business, follow up and persistence is everything. In the produce business, when I got Whole Foods, I emailed them and Walmart, I think for 3 years straight, until they finally came on board. So it's persistence is key, right? And so I kept calling him and finally listen, there's a guy named Joe in Arizona. He's our acquisitions manager. Reach out to him. We built a great relationship. We became friends. And then I just started doing a lot of deals with that fund. And then when we're talking, he would mention other funds. So I'm like, I'm going to write that down. Yeah. And then I'll reach out to the other funds. And that's kind of what helped me build that business. And then talking to Art Sanchez, we were talking, and he told me, oh, yeah, we did 280,000 this month. And I'm like, you're selling to funds, aren't you? He's like, how did you know? I'm like, dude, to do those numbers, you got to be selling to a fund. Yeah. He's like, and so him and Amir had started a little mastermind. They brought me in. It's called Collective Greatness. And so it was 6 companies, and we still have the mastermind, and we all chat, and we kind of exchange ideas. We have a group chat. So that mastermind really helps as well. So that kind of helped us all level up to a degree. And so that was kind of how we did well with the hedge funds.
Yeah.
It was really a game changer.
I love that. Yeah. And I think another alternative too is just to work with somebody who has the relationship with the hedge fund too, right?
Correct.
Which I think you ended up realizing at a certain point.
Yeah.
And you didn't work with everybody, but I remember you working with people that you knew that you could trust.
Yeah, correct.
And then they would just funnel the deal through you.
Yeah.
And you would work directly with the fund. And we did that.
Yeah,
quite
correct.
a bit.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, with you
Like,
guys. Yeah,
we would send you deals.
Correct.
Yeah. And if we, there was different funds at the time that you had a relationship with that we didn't, at that time. And that worked really well too.
Yeah, I think there was a time I was submitting 40 deals a month. It was quite a bit.
Yeah.
So it was going well.
Which is awesome. Yeah.
But then it started to fall off. But yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, but talking on that, they're going to come back stronger. Like I mentioned, we were at the IMN, and they mentioned, and they were doing a breakout session, and they said that single family is the next asset class for Walmart.
Wow.
Or for Walmart, for
Wall Street.
Wall Street. And so, clearly that tells you, well, if that's their new asset class, they're going to go huge in that, right?
Yeah.
And right now, I think 3 to 5% of their capital is for single family.
When do you think they'll do that?
More. I think once we hit the bottom of the market, it might be, 6 more months. That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
I do believe they're going to come back stronger than ever. And from what I hear, they want to own pretty much everything under 350, 400.
Yeah.
And I think they're going to do it. I think they're really going to dominate. They're going to make all of us renters.
Sure.
The ones
Europe is already that way, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of other parts of the world.
That's right.
I mean, America really is the only country, to my knowledge, that we have it the way it currently is, where the majority, and I don't know the exact. I actually at one point knew the percentage, but where the majority of the percentage is owned by, just the average American family,
Yeah, it's
right?
funny that you mentioned that. I think you're right, and I didn't think about that. But in Europe, it's kind of that way.
Yeah, totally.
Everybody rents.
Everybody rents.
Yeah.
It's all owned by big corporations.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. So I think it's going to shift that way. So I think we also want to focus on building our own portfolios.
Sure. Big time.
Big time.
And that was the advice that I got, and I've said it on a lot of podcasts lately. But my first mentor in real estate, he told me, he said, Austin, you got to buy real estate. He's like, you're gonna. He very specifically said, you're going to wholesale a lot of houses, right? And I've done a couple thousand now. Yeah. And he's like, you're gonna do a lot of retail and whatever else you're gonna flip a bunch. And he's like, the mistake that most people make is they don't keep enough.
Yeah.
And he had made that mistake at the time, right?
We all have, right?
Yeah. And I made it.
Yeah.
He gave me that advice, and then I went and did everything.
You didn't follow it, huh?
I mean, I bought a few.
Yeah.
I bought a few, but I should have bought 100.
Yeah.
500.
People would tell me the same thing, and but the thing is, in hindsight, right? But you think about it, it's like, man, if I'm going to make $30,000, $40,000 on this deal,
you always look at the money that you can make right then and there,
instead of the $300-$400 a month.
But then what ends up happening is if you make all that much money, then what do you do with the money? You eventually just got to go buy real estate.
Correct.
Because you put it in the stock market, but you're not going to put all your eggs in one basket, right?
Yeah.
There's really only so many places. I mean, unless you're buying companies, which you could do.
Yeah.
You could go acquire companies. I know Cody Sanchez and Ryan Pineda, and there's people talking about that right now, right? Which I guess is good if you can figure out what companies to buy and I guess companies that don't take a lot of time and energy if you're already if your time and energy is already tied up elsewhere, right?
Yeah.
But really, the moral of the story is there's only a handful of places. If you get to a point in wholesaling or whatever where you're making 100, 200, 300 grand a month, well, you don't just put all that money in a checking account.
Exactly. Exactly. You got to invest in other things.
FDIC won't even cover it, right?
Exactly.
You got to do something with it.
Yeah. Totally.
So you believe then? Obviously, nobody's got a crystal ball, but you believe that maybe the end of the year, going into 2024, that the hedge funds might come back, huh?
Yeah, They tell me, the ones I talk to, they're definitely coming back. I talked to one guy that we're friends. He's a buyer. He's in New York. He's on, I think, Park Avenue in Manhattan. He's like, Victor, we're sitting on $1.5 billion. That we got nothing to do with it. We're sitting on it, and they're a smaller fund. So there's a lot of funds that are sitting on money. They can't deploy it because they're not allowed to, because they're afraid the market's going to tank more. And I think it might. I think it's possible. I think especially if the stock market crashes, like they say it is, it might affect residential housing more. And then now we talk about the multifamily, that a lot of those loans are coming due. Those guys are going to be hurting too. So I think we're still coming into some headwinds and some instability in the market in the next 6 months. But I think 6 to 8, maybe 9 months, I think everyone's going to come back in, because ultimately a really safe asset class is real estate.
Right.
It's like all the apartments in the U.S. are owned by Wall Street funds, right? Or companies that are funded by Blackstone or BlackRock, et cetera. So I think they're going to start doing the same with single-family residential properties.
Yeah.
So I think it really is the next asset class for Wall Street. So we really got to get into, for the guys that aren't in the business, get into wholesaling, or get into building a portfolio, which is going to be our focus, probably in 6 months or so.
Yeah. What are you doing in the interim? Between now that the funds aren't buying again, are you? What's your main focus right now?
So right now, what we're doing doing PPC, and we're focused really on niche data, motivated sellers, foreclosures, probates, stuff like that. So that's really what our focus is. Now, there's not enough in one city, so we work in multiple cities is what we do, and just really focus on motivated data. That's all we hit, and then PPC works really well. And then luckily, one of the guys in Collective Greatness, Mike Martinez, we actually hit it off, became really good friends. We started a collection agency. He has a big collection agency in California. He does 1.5 a month. He has 120 employees. So he started a separate office with me. So that's going pretty well. And then we just launched a solar company with a friend of ours, Guy Rodriguez.
Wow.
He's in Florida this week, and we already got 3 contracts.
Wow.
So we're pretty excited. And we're more excited about that because solar, you could sell that. You can't sell a wholesale company, right? But you could sell a solar company. So we're excited about that. So now we got those 3 projects going, and so we're excited. Right now, the money still is in in real estate, but eventually I think that's going to shift.
That'll shift, yeah, for sure. With the wholesaling, to talk about that really quick, who's your buyer in a market like right now? Like, if it's not a hedge fund?
So a lot of cash buyers. Also, too, if you could get it listed on MLS, like that's probably the best way to go. But it just depends. Like we talk to a few different guys in the market. Usually we like to find buy and hold guys, rental companies. We reach out to them. Those are good sources for buyers because they'll tell you like, yeah, I got this client and this client that buys properties. So that's kind of what we're focused on right now. It really is still the cash buyers. Fix and flip, some buy and hold guys.
Mom and pop type guys.
Yeah,
yeah.
Well, there's some of the best buyers are the guys that have 300-400 properties.
Sure.
I
the
do
Zachary Keeps of the world.
The Zach Keeps. There's a Zach Keeps in every city.
Yeah.
That's who you want to reach out to.
Couple of them.
So
maybe,
when we pull data, we pull on PropStream, we pull the purchases in the little tip for everybody, purchases in the last year, and I like to see people who have 10 or more properties. Those are your big buyers.
Yeah.
And then you call them and you just build a relationship with them. There's one buyer that I have that actually funds a lot of our deals. He has 1,200 properties. And we got to do a lot of business. We're closing on a deal next month. Property I got for $22,000. He did the remodel and we listed for $160,000.
Oh, wow.
So it's a good deal. But what happened, in talking to him, he's a big guy, 1,200 properties. He tells me, yeah, Vic, you know what? Most guys just call me and they're like, hey, do you want to buy a property or sell a property? They don't bother to build a relationship with me. But I did because, I mean, why not? Why wouldn't you? So I built a relationship with him. And so he started funding my deals and we do JV deals. And so like when you find a really good buyer, I don't like to treat them just as a buyer. You try to build a relationship with that person.
Yeah.
So I think that's one thing that everyone should do in every market. Like find the top 10 buyers in the market and try to make that person your friend because eventually that person can teach you a lot as well. Because if they own 100, 200, 300 properties, like you just want them as a buyer?
Yeah.
Heck no. Like you want to make that person your friend because they're going to teach you a ton, right? And they're going to be a great business partner for you. And so I think a lot of guys are short-sighted. One thing that I learned from my cousin too is relationships is king. Like, he had great relationship with everybody. Everybody loved him. And I think like you really have to focus on relationships, especially with big players. And it doesn't have to be just because you want something out of it, but it's going to benefit you in some way, either financially or just in learning or just improving your life. It's always good to make those relationships with people.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's a huge piece of advice, actually. I think.
Yeah.
Like, I think the guy you're talking about, I've actually done a couple of transactional funding deals with that guy.
Yeah.
Is that the one that you gave us the contact information to?
Exactly. Yeah.
I think he funded a couple of our deals.
Yeah, he funds a lot of deals. Yeah.
So I got to call him up and build a relationship with him.
He's a good dude, and he's a good person. Yeah. I won't give out his name so people can call me and.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
No, and I'm just like you. I try my very best to build relationships with everybody, right? Yeah. And that's ultimately how you got into the collection agency. I mean, like, correct. You built a relationship with this Mike guy, right?
Yeah.
And the next thing you know, you're starting, a company with him, and then one thing leads to the next, and now. You've got multiple different companies.
Yeah, but it's interesting. So I met Mike, and I think it was, I don't know if I was already in Collective Greatness or not, but I met Mike at an event I think at Thrive. And a guy asked me like, hey, you want to go to a boxing match? I'm like, yeah, sure, let's go. And he's like, it's going to be me, you, and Mike. I'm like, perfect, let's go. So we went, and then, we had like third row seats. They're really good seats. And so I told him like, well, how much is a ticket? And he was like, oh, don't worry about it. Mike already got it. I'm like, what? He's like, Mike took care of it. And I'm like, well, how much was it? He's like, we don't know if it was like $1,500 or $1,800 for the ticket. I'm like, geez, like that. You just don't give that away to somebody. So then I realized, he's a giver. And it wasn't for like, like, oh, I want to get more from this guy. I'm like, man, that's a good person.
Yeah.
Like, who does that, right? Who does that? Like, very few. Even guys that have money, very few people do that. Right? I'm like, that's just a giver. And so we just kind of like, man, it's a good person. And we just clicked, we hit it off. And so we got to the point where like, if he needed advice, because he was pretty new into real estate, he'd been doing it for about a year or so. So he would call me for advice. I was completely transparent with him because I'm like, this guy's a good person. So I would give him any information he wanted. I was completely transparent. And he did the same with me. And that allowed us to build a relationship. And then we became business partners, which we are now. And so the key is like if you're a giver, it's going to come back around. It's really come back around. He was a giver with me, and I was a giver with him. And I think that really helped to build a strong relationship. And now we got the collections company. We do real estate deals together. We're working on a deal on Miami Beach. And then we're doing solar now. So it really helped in just being transparent and open with someone, and not expecting to take something from someone, but rather just, to give.
I love that. Such great advice. Truly, because anybody can listen to what you just said and go implement that tomorrow.
Correct, yeah.
Like anybody, right?
Yeah.
Like it's just like, okay, everybody you meet and everybody you talk to and everybody you interact with, just be a giver.
Yeah, exactly.
Serve them. Figure out a way to provide them value, and it's something that I talk about all the time, right? I try to tell people, like, guys, like, and it's I always kind of make fun of the person that, like, they'll reach out to you or whatever, and there's the old saying, like, can I pick your brain, right? Yeah. And it's like, instead of doing that to people, like, figure out a way to just give them value.
Correct.
And then you don't have to ask them if you can pick their brain. Like they'll and it's just such a weird thing to ask somebody, like, that you've never met or you don't know, right? It's like, just give them something, and then they'll want to give you something in return.
Yeah, because I get guys that hit me up all the time. Hey, can I get some advice, or can I ask you a question, this and that? But if you bring me a deal and say, hey, I'll sell you this deal, or can we partner up on it? Yeah. Guess what? What do you need from me?
Your buddies now.
Yeah, your buddies
right?
now. You know what I mean? Your buddies now. And there's been some deals that I would actually sell it to someone I want to build a relationship with.
Oh, yeah.
Because I wanted to build a relationship.
I might even make a couple dollars less.
Correct.
Selling it to that guy.
Exactly.
But it's a strategic move, because I know I got to figure out a way to give him value. Yeah. Because I'm not going to be able to get his attention if I don't give him value.
Exactly. Some guys are short-sighted. When I first started, I had a deal, and this guy, I sent it to this guy that I had met, and he's like, oh, yeah, he was like, I think ARV is like 150. And I've told the story before. I'm like, no, it's more than that. He's like, oh, maybe the ARV is like 170. I'm like, no, I already knew ARV was like closer to 230.
Wow.
And he's like, well, I'll tell you what, I'll give you $5,000 above what you paid. I was like, wow, jeez. And like, so that guy, like, I never did a deal with him ever again. Never bothered to talk to him. I think he called me a couple of times. I didn't answer the phone. Yeah. I don't want to do business with someone like that. Like, you're just out for yourself. You're out to, like, get one over somebody. Yeah. I have no interest in doing business with a person like that.
Not at all.
And then so I sent it to Jamil at the time. I go, Jamil, I got this deal. What do you think? I'll pay you this. Just like that. Yeah. I'm like, all right, done. And the other guy called me, and I told that guy, I'm like, I already sold it. He's like, what'd you sell it at? I'm like, I sold it at this price, and I think he offered me $7,000 more. I'm like, no, dude, I already sold it.
Wow.
Yeah, I didn't want to do it. Even if it was more money, I didn't want to deal with him. And since then, because Jamil was like straightforward, transparent, he was honest about it, and no BS. We started doing a ton of deals. Yeah.
For sure.
And then Thomas was the same way.
Oh my gosh. All great people.
All great people. And the key is, like, if you're a good person, it's gonna come back around. The people that hold back, they don't want to share, or they're not transparent, it's just going to come back around. Yeah. Like, people are going to catch on to it, and they're like, well, we just want to do business. You know what I mean? I mean, people that are wanting to just take and not give, they just it bites them in the ass, basically.
Totally.
You know what I mean?
100%.
So,
yeah, I couldn't agree more. Just out of curiosity, what are your thoughts? Right now, a lot of people are talking about novation, and a lot of people are talking about sub 2 and creative finance. And what do you do any of that in your day-to-day, or do you? So
sub 2, we have tried to do. We haven't really done a lot. It hasn't been our focus. But also, too, because it depends on the data you're pulling. So I think Pace and people that he teaches sub 2 too, they pull like expired listings or people that don't have a lot of equity. So they have to do a sub 2. Like someone that's in foreclosure, like we're working on one right now. They're in foreclosure and they have to do a sub 2. Yeah. So in some instances we do it. But the data we pull typically is high equity, so we don't run across that much. We have done some seller finance deals, but sub 2 is great. If there's like necessity there, if there's some motivation, I think it is really good. Novations is good too. We do more attorney in fact, so like you have the right to list it on the market, not necessarily novate the contract, because that's what a novation is. You're novating, you're replacing the contract. Yeah. I rather do an AIF, which is attorney in fact, and then also too you could double close on it just to make it easier. It costs more money, but it's less headache. So there's a few different strategies. Sure. I think that'll work. I think Corey Gary and Rich Wonders have done really well teaching novations. Yeah. I think it works. I'd rather just keep it simple and just do a straight wholesale or just listed on MLS,
Sure.
it would be ideal.
Yeah, no, and I'm kind of the same way. I mean, we do a little bit of it. We just did a novation. I think we have 3 novations right now. We just sold a novation, and then we've got, I think, 2 other novations. And I was just talking to a couple of my partners today about it, right? I was like, really just trying to understand, because our process right now, we run a decent sized operation,
Yeah.
and every department that we have kind of has its own process,
Yeah.
right? And so we have a department where they're focused on, creative
Yeah.
type stuff, right? And we're really just talking and trying to figure out, like, okay, how do we want to go about doing it if we want to scale that department? And it gets complicated, right?
Yeah.
If you've ever wanted to get into wholesaling real estate and you want to learn how to flip contracts and wholesale, right? Maybe you're brand new, maybe you've never wholesaled a deal, or maybe you're even doing a couple of deals a month right now, but you want to learn how to do more. Instead of joining my coaching program or somebody else's coaching program, we're actually looking to hire. So go ahead and message me 480-418-5339 and send me a text message opportunity, okay? So if you want to work with me, you want to work with my incredible team, you want all of our leads, you want all of our systems, all of our processes, everything, right? And I've done about 2,000 wholesale deals in my career, then go ahead, shoot me a text, 480-418-5339, and message me opportunity. And look, especially if you're in my state, okay, the state of Arizona. If you live in Arizona and you want to get into wholesaling, this especially is an opportunity for you, because you can come sit right in this office with my entire team and be a part of one of the biggest wholesaling companies in the country. I look forward to talking to you. Like, because we're all licensed agents and there's a lot of
Well, you got to be careful
fiduciary
I think if you're licensed, not to cut you off, but I think if you're a licensed agent, you can't do an attorney in fact, right? Or like you got to be careful with novations, all that stuff, right?
We can't, and so we don't, right?
Yeah.
So it's in somebody else does it, right?
Yeah.
In their name.
Correct.
And they're the buyer,
Yeah.
and they're the attorney in fact, and then we will list it.
Correct.
Right? So all we do technically is just list the property,
Yeah.
right? Or we'll be the buyer, and then I'll actually have a whole different real estate company list the property for
Yeah.
sale. Even though we own a retail team division, I won't let my agents represent the seller, I
'Cause
guess.
it's
or
a
the
conflict of interest.
conflict of interest.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So and that's what I mean. Like but those are complicated things to figure out when you want to do anything at scale.
Yeah.
Because then it's like, well, how do I get paid? And if I have somebody that they're putting everything in their name or what have you, like then, or how, from a tax perspective, they owe me, like it just gets complicated,
It gets
right?
convoluted, yeah.
And then at a certain point, you're like, man, I'm just better off just wholesaling.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, but I talk to a lot of people right now in 2023 that can't figure out how to wholesale. I mean, it just blows my mind.
Well, it is challenging. It is tough, and I think the reason why it's maybe like our fault, the guys that are selling the hedge funds, because at one time you're offering 80, 85%, sometimes 90% of value, and so now everyone we've talked to, they were used to getting an offer for 85, 90% of value, so you can't get a wholesale deal because everyone's used to getting a ton of money for their property, so it is more challenging. So that's when you're like, well, hey, listen, if you want that price, I could do it if you let our team list it on MLS.
Yeah.
So then you can switch it to an AIF, which we're starting to do, and a lot of people are doing. Sean Terry does really good with AIFs.
Yeah.
So it definitely works, and I think it's something that probably everyone needs to start doing more of because everyone's going to start to go that route.
Yeah.
I don't prefer it. I prefer to just to wholesale. I really liked wholesaling. That was what I was doing.
Wholetailing is a ton of fun.
I was wholesaling everything I could get, but now I'm not doing it as much. Why? Because the market's shifting, right? You see
Days
property
on market are longer. Yeah.
days on market are longer. Property values are dropping 2-3% per month. They're talking about a crash. So it's just now it's I got a couple properties that have been like just. I'm getting offers, but not where they used to be. I think when the market first shifted, I had a property, ARV was 313. By the time I sold it, ARV was 260.
Wow.
And I sold it within 3 months. So in 3 months, it dropped a ton, right? So that's happening more and more. So you do want to be careful. And so I can see why attorney in fact works, and it does work. But I prefer wholesaling, but it's hard to do now.
Yeah. And attorney, in fact, I get that you can do really well with it, but you've really got to find the right person who because really, and I always try to do good business, right? So I'm always thinking about the homeowner and helping them and serving them, right? And doing the best thing I can do for them.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, just listing it on the market is a great option for them. Like not even an attorney, in fact. Like just listing it with an agent,
I
right?
think with you guys, it's perfect because you guys are licensed agents.
We're licensed
but
agents.
for the guys that aren't licensed, they don't have that option.
Well, you just partner up with a real estate team.
Yeah, exactly. You can partner with an agent, which we do also. And actually, we'll have to start sending you our deals here in town. But we do that in Georgia and California, and on some deals, it just depends on the seller.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Well, and so then it becomes like an attorney. There are situations where an attorney, in fact, still does make sense, even if you have the opportunity to list it on the open MLS, because a lot of it is like the not having to do anything for the seller, right?
Yeah.
It's like, hey, you don't want to take a wholesale price; it's too low.
Yeah.
You don't. Retail is all the way up here. They kind of want somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
Right. They don't want to take this low ball offer, but they don't want to do all the work to get the full retail offer.
Exactly.
And they really don't want to deal with everything and all the phone calls, and they just don't want to deal with it.
Correct.
So it's like, look, attorney, in fact,
is the best route.
Somebody is going to deal with it all for you.
Exactly.
You're not going to do anything.
Exactly.
Right? We'll sign all the paperwork on your behalf. We'll do the bins there on your behalf. We'll do the appraisal on your behalf. I mean, everything, we'll just do it on your behalf.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. You're good at pitching it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I can pitch it, no problem. We won't. The only way that I would do one, though, again, my company, is that if we weren't the listing agent.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I would have
like
to...
I said, because it's a conflict of interest.
Yeah, I have
You
to be
gotta
the
careful,
principal in the transaction, right?
Exactly.
So we actually don't... I just have somebody else pitch it that's not on our team.
Yeah.
And they are the buyer, and then we'll rep them.
Yeah, makes
But I
sense.
could do it the other way around too.
Yeah,
Either
you can
one.
do both options.
I'm not going to do both at the same time.
Yeah, you can do both. Yeah.
So
yeah, exactly.
But that's what we were talking about today. We're like, well, which one do we want to do? Do we want to be the buyer?
Yeah.
And then just have another team do the listing?
Yeah.
Or do we want to have somebody else do the buy and we'll do the listing?
Yeah.
We were trying to kind of figure out what makes the most sense.
Yeah,
And,
makes sense.
just different things that you have to think about, right?
Yeah, totally.
And try to do it the right way and, scale the right way.
Yeah, because it is harder to wholesale deals. Are you guys saying it is harder to wholesale deals?
It is, yeah. I think we're really good at building relationships with buyers.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say that has always kind of been I would say the last 12 months, we knew, we saw the pivot coming, right?
Yeah.
And we were like, okay, because it went back to kind of like what I learned in the very beginning of wholesaling, right? Which is like, hey, yeah, you might get lucky every now and then and send an email blast and sell a deal on Investor Lift. But the majority of the time, you got to call the buyer and you got to build a relationship with the buyer and you got to know what the buyer's looking for, right? And you got to know, so I think now we have such a big team that every day, we'll make every team member on our disposition side will call, 100 buyers a day and get their buy box, right? So on any given time, we've got all these relationships with buyers that are mom and pop type people, right?
Yeah.
Landlords, fix and flippers, whatever. And they're still buying. They just want to buy at a deeper discount right now, right? So we know their buy box. So I would say a lot of times we get a deal and we already know who will buy it.
Yeah.
We didn't even have to blast it.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah. And if we don't sell it within 12 or 24 hours, then we'll blast it, obviously. And, and then typically it'll sell.
Yeah.
Yeah. But we're doing really good, man. We have 60 deals in the pipe right now,
really
just wholesale.
That's really good.
We've got another, we have 47 deals under contract right now, sold.
Yeah.
So, not bad.
That's good. I think you're now one of the top wholesalers in, for sure, the state, if not the country, right?
A lot of fun, yeah. I don't. Well, there's no way to track it, so I don't know. Maybe there's somebody out there that. When you look at it, social media is such an interesting thing, right? Because you only know the people who you see.
Yeah, exactly.
So there could be some dude that none of us know about
there's
that's
some guys
just
out there
balling out.
Yeah, exactly.
There's
There's always a strategy that someone's using that just took it to the next level, and he's not telling anybody.
For sure, yeah.
100%.
The Mike guy you were talking about a little while ago, he's killing the game.
Oh yeah,
right.
He's doing really good. Yeah,
and there's I know Art Sanchez. Is he still doing really good in wholesaling?
Yeah. He's still doing good.
There's a lot of guys killing it.
He was doing more hedge funds. Now he's doing more attorney and facts.
Sure.
So everyone's shifting.
You just
Sean
have to
Terry
pivot.
again is doing really good.
Yeah.
So
Sean Terry's killing it. Yeah. I'd love to get Sean on the show. We'll have to get Sean on the show soon.
I'll send him a text to tell him to be on
he
here.
knows who I am.
Yeah.
We've talked 100 times.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
But
everybody knows Sean.
I don't think I have I never had direct contact, his contact information. But every event I've ever seen him at, we know each other.
Exactly.
And through Cody back in the day.
Cody, yeah. Well, the thing with me is I actually when I started wholesaling, the first course I ordered was Sean's because I heard he's the GOAT, right? And then I forgot how. Just I met him and Corey Gary told me about his mastermind. So I joined the mastermind, and then since then me and Sean became friends. So now I'm in his mastermind.
Very cool.
Scott Oates is also one of the coaches there. And then I help to facilitate sometimes as well. Yeah. So it's really turned out. It's really cool. It's kind of full circle. Like, your mentor becomes your friend.
So cool, man.
It's just super cool.
Brandon Simmons still working with Sean Terry?
He's actually sometimes a facilitator too. Yeah. Brandon's doing his own thing now. But he's still involved with Sean and whatnot. Sean, everybody loves Sean.
Oh my gosh. Sean's a phenomenal guy. Exactly. Yeah. And he's been in the game forever.
Yeah. And actually I was thinking the other day, I'm like, you know what, I got into wholesaling just to make money. I didn't care about anything else. I just want to make money, just to improve my life and my family's life. But I thought about it, like, man, I've made some really good friends. It's crazy. Like, we're friends now. I'm friends with a bunch of other guys. You get to meet some cool people and they become your friends. So now I've actually built a whole new circle of friends now. And my wife used to tell me, like, you don't have any friends. And now I have a ton. I have more than her, which is funny because she's super outgoing.
Yeah.
But it's interesting that, I got into this business to make money, but now the relationships is really
oh my gosh, incredible.
Is a huge part of it.
For sure.
Because we're all like-minded.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
My wife tells me, she goes, it's kind of weird. You guys are all the same. I go, really? She's like, yeah, you guys are all the same. I'm like, oh, that's interesting.
Very. Yeah. That's hot. It's such a small world too. Everybody knows everybody. And
exactly.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. Talk to me a little bit about, really quick. You're planning on building a portfolio.
Yeah.
So talk to me about your game plan there, what you're planning to do, and kind of what you're thinking about.
So that's going back to relationships. But one of my biggest buyers here in town, he's like, dude, you should build a portfolio. I'm like, yeah, that's the plan. He's like, well, tell you what, I'll put up the money and you get the deals and we'll go 50-50. I'm like, let's do it.
Done deal, yeah.
Yeah. So I didn't do it sooner because I was afraid of the valuations were too high. But in hindsight, I should have done it because interest rates were low. So that was a big mistake. So it's more about interest rates than property values, right, for rentals. So that was a mistake on my part. But I think there's going to be a lot of deals this year, so we're going to just start building a portfolio.
Yeah, I love that.
He was telling me about a group of guys that I've talked to in Florida. They were wholesalers working for a company, and they started working with him, and they were wholesalers, and now they got 300 properties.
Wow.
So
insane.
Yeah, so that's the key with relationships. You want to work with guys that you hit it off with, but you could do that. And I was talking to his business partner. He's like, you know what? We've always thought about Atlanta. I'm like, it's a good market. He's like, yeah, we should do Atlanta. So we'll probably do Atlanta.
Okay, primarily.
Yeah. That's the plan.
It is a phenomenal market.
Yeah.
And you can get a property. Like, what would you say your target property value would be for a good rental property in Atlanta? Like 100 and something?
Well, I got one. I'm selling it. I don't because I got a hard money loan on it. I got it for $130. I'm selling it. It was worth $230. Now I'm selling it for $210. That's a good deal.
Yeah.
So I think anything under $250 is pretty good.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. The funds, when you have a relationship with the funds, they'll tell you what works. They're like, hey, I've talked to like 3 or 4. They're like, hey, Vic, right now, in this market, anything under $250. Above $250, we're not really looking at. So that tells you like, oh, interesting. So now so they tell you, and they were like, we want 3.2.
Yeah.
We want 3.2 under 250.
Gotcha.
So it's interesting that they kind of point you in that right direction.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And I think that it's so interesting, right? Like it makes you wonder if going like out of state. I have a couple rentals in Arizona, you know, but I've always thought about like, cause you can't get anything in Arizona under 250.
Yeah.
Like you almost have to go.
Well, in Arizona, you have to go somewhere else.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. So it makes you wonder if just leaving and going. But then a lot of people like argue, like Zach keeps Adam on the show, right? And he's like, oh, don't ever go like to a different market or whatever. Like you don't know the market and blah 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 blah.
Yeah, I think he's right, but also too now there's so much data out there. you could see like what are the best markets. Like you could see like what state people are migrating to. So those are the top states. I think are Florida, Texas, Arizona, North Carolina, Tennessee.
Yeah.
So those are the best markets. That's where everyone's migrating to.
Sure.
So it's knowing what markets to pick. Also, too, on crime grade, you could enter the zip code and you can see, what the crime grade is. Is it an F? Then stay away.
Yeah.
If it's a C or up, then it's a good market. So there's a lot of resources now that kind of help us to pick what markets to go into.
Yeah, for sure. Tell me just a little bit about the solar thing, because I'm a little bit interested in that. And just for anybody watching or listening, like, do you think that I've seen a lot of buddies of mine like murder the game of solar?
Yeah.
I mean, like they've done really well in that industry. Like, what made you want to get into that industry?
Well, we thought it was a good industry because right now everyone's getting behind the whole green thing, right? Mm-hmm. But also too, when you see the government is putting together some big in tax incentives. And I think they got a $47 billion package, I think it is, for green.
Yeah.
So, like, they're really helping, those industries. So, number one, you go where the money's at, right? That's number one. But also, too, for us, the biggest thing is you want to exit, right? You can't sell a wholesale company. Can you sell a collection agency? I don't know, might be kind of tough. But you could sell a solar company.
For sure.
Right? So, and we've heard a lot of guys, Mike met a guy that, sold for $100 million.
Wow.
There's other guys that sold for $60 million, $20 million. So you could sell it for 10x or whatever it is. So that's the great thing that we like about it. But also too, so there's one guy that was an all-in mastermind. Mm-hmm. Again, that's why masterminds are great. We're in all-in mastermind. I met a guy named Guy. And I was following him on Instagram, and I'm like, I sent him a message like, hey, I love your content. And we started chatting. And he's like, yeah, I used to be in solar. But then I got into real estate, but I did really good with solar. I'm like, well, why not get back into it? We've been kind of thinking about it. He's like, well, let's talk about it. All right, let's do it. Well, let me get with Mike. And next thing you know, we just started a company. Yeah. So it literally was a conversation on Instagram, and now we got a company.
Yeah.
So we kind of just
I love that.
Fell into it, right? And I think he told us his best year, he made $1 million in commissions, that's a lot.
Incredible.
For just commissions. That's crazy. So he's a really good salesperson, and he's a good guy. So it just worked out, and so that's why it seemed right. Like we should get into this because we have the person that has industry. We have Mike's background in business, my background as well. So and the opportunity is there. Go where the money's at. It just made sense.
Logistically, how do you start? Like in solar, what is it that the company's doing? Are you installing the solar panels?
No,
Where's the money at?
So, well, the money is in the install and in the sales of it, but basically what most guys do, you get the contract, and then you basically have a company do the install for you, and then you get the contract financed by a solar company that finances it for you.
Got it.
And then you get X percentage of it's based on the kilowatt, I think it is, and based on that, that's how much money you make depending on what you sell it at.
For residual. Like, is it a residual type of contract in the solar industry? Is it one time?
It's one time, yeah.
Okay.
It's one time. I'm sure there's companies out there that do residual, but it's one time.
Got it. Yeah. Yeah, I think I have a buddy that figured out, I don't know, like how I'll have to ask him how he's doing it, but he went from like, just being a normal average guy to like, like buying like Rolls Royce after Rolls Royce after, they must just be absolutely dominating it.
Yeah. There's a couple of things. There's a lot of tax incentives for the homeowners, but also too, like I've been seeing some guys back east, their bills are $1,500 a month for electricity.
Yeah.
Their energy bills, $1,500 a month. That's crazy. And we think for us it's expensive to pay $600 a month in the summertime, but these guys are paying $1,500 a month in the wintertime. And so they're like everyone's chomping at the bit for solar right now. So
why is this so much out there?
Because the energy costs are so high.
Wow.
The whole Ukraine war is not helping things. And then, because of Biden's new plan for the green plan, the Green New Deal, right? Yeah. They kind of shut down oil production, which hasn't helped oil prices. That's why we're paying $5-6 a gallon for gas.
Right.
So, all that has been a factor, and that's why people are paying too much money for energy.
Yeah.
Energy, which is oil, right?
Solar, what are your thoughts as it pertains to solar and then real estate? Like, because like on the real estate side, right? When we go acquire a house, like a lot of hedge funds and stuff, they don't like solar. People don't want solar on the deal, right?
Correct.
So then, like, do you think that who is solar right for when we're talking about the homeowner? Like
Yeah.
who's it right for and who's it wrong for?
Well, I think it's really right for anyone that wants to save on their energy costs. It's
But
right
then if they
for
go to
anyone.
sell their house, they can't sell it.
Well, they could sell it, but the problem is when people sell it, they still have the system on their house and they still owe money on
They have a
it.
payoff.
So then people are like, well, shoot, I don't want to assume a $30,000-$40,000 payoff. So that's kind of what the issue is. But
That's the problem.
yeah,
Yep.
but if you're not planning on selling your house, if you plan on staying there for, at least, 10, 15 years, I think it's great because it does save you money on
Sure.
your energy bills.
So that's the person it's for. Is somebody who's planning to stay there for a while.
Yeah.
Or somebody who can maybe pay cash for the solar.
Or someone that pays cash as well.
Yeah,
exactly.
They don't have to go get a loan.
I think too with hedge funds they don't want to deal with solar, but I think if you're selling it retail, I think a retail buyer
Well, I've seen times where they can't qualify though.
that's another thing. You can't
new
they
buyer.
can't qualify. That's exactly it. So,
You know?
because I think you have to have a minimum credit score of 650.
Yeah.
So that's true. You do have to qualify for it as well.
So if they can't qualify, then I've seen deals fall apart.
Yeah.
As a result
Yeah,
of
I
solar.
can see that.
Quite
Yeah,
often
for sure.
actually in the
Yeah, I can
retail
see
world.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I almost want to say like every other deal
Really?
that has solar in the
Well, I
retail
think that's where
world
they have to-
that I
they-
deal with, they fall apart.
Wow. But I think that's because there's an existing lease on it, right? Like
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
If it's paid off, it's not an issue. But
Never an issue.
Gotcha.
Nope. If they're
Yeah.
paid off, they're not an issue ever. Like matter of fact, like when they're paid off, it's a value add, total value add.
Yeah.
I mean, people are like, oh my gosh, like
Yeah.
But as soon as like the first question in the retail world is the solar paid off or is there still a balance?
Yeah.
You know.
Oh, totally. 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then if there's a balance, it's obviously like people are like, oh God, you know,
Yeah.
and then the buyer typically,
Exactly.
who knows? I mean, if they love the house, I guess they'll figure it out.
Yeah,
but-
exactly.
yeah, I was just curious. So, what? A couple more questions, then we'll get out of here. What over all the success that you've had the last couple, 3, 4, 5 years? What is like one of the biggest mistakes that you think you've made? That maybe if you were to go back and do it all over again, and I get that. I ask entrepreneurs this, and they're like, "Well, everything happens for a reason, right?" And so I get that.
Yeah.
But I mean, if there was a mistake that you maybe, if in a perfect world, you would go back and not make that mistake, what would that be?
Well, I think a mistake that most people make is not working for yourself early enough or soon enough. Like the sooner you work for yourself, the better you're off. The better off you are. I used to work for a guy named Don Lepre. I don't know if you ever heard of him.
Sounds so
Don
familiar,
Lepre
yeah.
used to be an infomercial guy. I believe he helped Dean Graziosi get started in the business. I believe they were friends. They kind of did some business. So he goes way back. He was a big infomercial guy. And I remember him telling us, you know what, guys, if you're working for someone else, you're helping someone else achieve their dreams. And it's true. Like if you're working for someone else as a 9 to 5, hourly guy, it's different if commission, because commission you're making good money. It's different. It's a different ballgame. But if you're like hourly guy, you're working for someone else and you're helping them achieve their dreams. Unless you love your job, and that's different. Now, starting your own business is not for everybody. But I think a lot of times it's like you really are just helping someone else achieve their dreams. So I think that's one bit of, I guess,
You did
advice.
that for too long, yeah.
I think I did that for too long. I think that's one bit of advice. I think, too, the smart move for anyone watching, like if you don't know anything about the business or you want to get into certain business, like work for someone for cheap or intern for them. Like seek someone out that could be a mentor for you. Ask them for a job. Like, hey, if you're paying 10 an hour, I'll work for 8.
Yeah.
You want to find a creative way to get in with those people so you can learn the business. And so I would have done that. I told my stepson, like, work for a real estate company or whatever industry you want to be in, work for them or whoever it is, because he's in Tucson, he's not in Phoenix. Work for them, learn the business, build relationships, and then when you're ready, when you feel you learned enough, branch out on your own.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I would do. And the mistake I made is not doing it soon enough.
Yeah. I think everybody should do what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Well, both of the pieces of advice that you gave, but in terms of the second one, go work for somebody.
Yeah.
That's what I did.
Yeah.
I went and worked for Cody, and I worked
Yeah.
for Josiah, and I worked for Jameel back in the day. I
Yeah.
mean, I bird dogged for all of them.
Oh, I didn't know you worked for Jameel, too. Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
Oh, yeah. All that way before Keegley. I mean,
wow.
because I got in 2014. And so Torsten Colson was my mentor, and then I went and I bird dogged for Josiah and Hunter for a long time before they were even partners with Jameel. That was when Jameel was partners with
Chris Simon, right?
Mhm,
yeah, that's right.
and I just bird dogged, So like I didn't work for them, But, they would give me like their old leads or whatever back in the day, and I'd go lock them up.
Yeah.
And I'd bring them a contract.
You just grinded it out.
Just grind it, bro. Yeah, Josiah. I remember Josiah and Hunter, they would give me like portal access to like different lead accounts that they had back in the day. And they were probably crappy lead accounts, like looking back on it, right? It was like the bottom of the barrel type thing they were giving me, But dude, I had a work ethic. Yeah. And I would just I would get in my car and I'd drive out to the address that they said, send me like a couple a day, And dude, I mean, I remember going to like Casa Grande and like, all over, like like Maricopa, and I'd just knock on the door and I'd bring a purchase contract out there back in the day, and then I'd bring it back, call Josiah on the way back, I'm like, dude, I got it.
Yeah, I didn't know that. That's crazy.
Yeah. And that's very cool. And and that's just how I got in, and then here we are. Yeah. Right. And I think everybody should do that. Yeah. And I think a lot of people, their ego gets in the way.
Oh, 100%.
100%. Like, I can't go work for, like, I have a guy right now that wants to come work for us. And I told him that, he's running his own thing right now in Wyoming. And I'm like, dude, you're like, we kind of had a heart to heart of how much money he's making, And I'm like, dude, well, if you don't have a big ego, like, you should come work for me. Yeah. Because he has a house here. Yeah. And I'm like, and I obviously, there was a whole context. I didn't just like call him out, but I basically said like, hey bro, like if your pride isn't in the way, I think you'd actually make a lot more money if you came and worked in my organization. Yeah. And I said, you don't have to do it forever, but come do it for a year and make $300,000. Yeah. And then go start your own thing, And he was saying he wanted to live here anyways, because the weather and everything. Exactly. I'm like, dude,
Yeah, I think there's nothing wrong with working with someone for giving them 2-3 years, and then like, hey, I'm going to do my own thing. And a lot of times they'd be like, well, okay, well, maybe we can partner up on your new thing. You know what I mean?
For sure.
So I mean, there's it just having those relationships allow you to just grow in other ways that you may not even be aware of.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more, man. I couldn't agree more. What's one thing that if you like, this is like, we're talking like life in general, and I know we didn't get too much, so I have to eventually do another podcast.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that you asked a lot of questions. Yeah, because I'm more like the answer type guy. So.
I love it, dude. And by the way, I could go another 2 hours, but I know that we got to go to the bathroom and whatever. But we didn't talk much about your family and your personal relationships and stuff, which normally I like to ask. Yeah. But if you were to go back, and like, let's say give your you have any kids? You have kids? Yeah. So if you could, for whatever reason, you could only give them like one piece of advice, like life advice. It could be like, it could be anything, right? But for like whatever reason, you couldn't give them anything more than just that one piece of advice. Something you've learned, you've acquired as you've gotten older. What would that one piece of advice be? Yeah.
What's interesting on my IG page, I have a highlight. It's life lessons. So stuff that comes to my mind, I post it there. But there's a lot. But I think the biggest thing is like believe in your ability to achieve. Just you have to believe that you can figure it out. Like if you seek the knowledge and you take action and you're persistent and you put a lot of energy behind it, like you'll get there. It might take a while, but you'll get there. Also too, like I love quotes from other people. There's a quote by Napoleon Bonaparte, which is men are moved by two levers: fear and self-interest. And it's a little Machiavellian, right? But it's interesting because it's true. Like everyone, it's like someone's going to do something either out of fear or self-interest. I lean towards the self-interest, right? Like how can I help them? How can I motivate them? How can I get them to like do stuff for me that's going to benefit them and it's going to benefit me? So, stuff like that, like little quotes are really powerful. And I think that's one that really helped me as well. I think, there's another one where he says, my life changed when I realized a soldier will give his life for a little blue ribbon. And that tells you what Tony Robbins talks about, which is significance. Like people would do almost anything for significance. And I think significance is what really drives people the most. Like people want to feel significant. That's why we drive the fancy cars, we wear the nice clothes and the nice watches. Like you're really looking for, if you really think about it, you're looking for significance. That's why some people they're so driven to succeed. Yeah, it gets to a point where you have enough money, you have food, you have shelter. Like, what are you after? It's significance. You want to feel good about yourself, maybe in front of others as well, but you want to just have significance, self-actualization, right?
Sure.
So I think that's a big part. Like if you really realize the reason that you're doing things, it'll help you to like base your actions on what your goals are and what drives you.
Yeah.
You know, so there's really like so many little tidbits that I've learned that make a difference. But I think the biggest thing is really self-belief, and just like believe that it's figure outable, and then taking action.
I love that.
You know? And role model. Like you role model other people. That's what I did. Like copy other people. Like that's it. Like if you want to achieve what other people achieve, you want to copy them. You know,
Do what they do.
Yeah, when it's interesting. Like I think it was Henry Ford used to work for Thomas Edison. So there's a lot of guys that used to work for guys that are like industry icons that used to work for other industry icons. So mentors is huge. You have to have a mentor. You have to just seek people out that can teach you something.
Yeah.
No one's really self-made.
Sure.
You know, no one really self-made.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, and anybody that's achieved legendary things in their life, they've got a lot of people on their team helping them do it too.
Oh, well, yeah, you need a team.
That's the other part of it.
Yeah, you can't do it on your own. Yeah, you need a team. That I learned, like, early into this journey, that you need a team. Well, I mean, look what you've done. You said 70 people, right? So yeah, it takes a team. You can't do it on your own. Yeah. Like me, I like to limit my expenses, so I do have a small team. But to really get to the next level, you have to scale a team.
You do.
You have to.
Yeah. I love it, man. Well, dude, I really appreciate you being on the show.
No, thanks for having me, man.
Where can people find you if they want to talk to you, interact with you?
On IG.
Okay.
My IG is vic.heredia. It's vic.heredia.
Vic with a C.
With a C, yeah.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay. I love that, man.
Yeah.
Appreciate you being on the show.
Oh, thank
it was
you,
an
man.
honor.
It's been great.
Really cool to have you here.
Yeah, for sure.
We'll do it again.
Yeah, I think there's a lot more we could cover, too.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Yeah.
But we've gone like an hour 45 already.
Are you serious?
Yeah,
Wow, it's been a long time.
So,
Jeez.
and dude, like I'll be Joe Rogan eventually, and we'll do like 4 hour long. I'm still getting the stamina.
Gotcha.
So I'm like, I watch Joe. He's like 4 hours.
Yeah,
dude,
it's crazy.
Like 5 hours.
But he gets on all kinds of topics.
Yeah, which I would love to do.
Yeah, we could do that too.
We gotta be a little more prepared.
Yeah.
We gotta have like a couple bottles of water
maybe,
in here.
Maybe a glass of wine.
Yeah, for sure.
Exactly.
Glass of scotch, maybe. Yeah.
Or scotch.
Cigar.
Some Hennessy.
Yeah.
Cigars would be nice, right?
Yeah, right.
Some cigars
I don't know
and
that
some
the
cognac.
commercial building we're in would allow it, But we got to buy a building.
Yeah, maybe some lounge chairs or something.
Yeah, I love it.
That'd be kind of cool.
I appreciate you being here, brother.
For sure.
Yeah.
Thank you. Likewise. Thanks for having me.
Hey, if you're still watching the show, if you're on YouTube, it would mean the world to me if you would subscribe if you haven't already. Drop a comment down below, like the video, and if you're listening, it would mean the world if you would leave a 5-star review, and we'll see you in the next one.